Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that book or author that you may never have heard of, sort of like the treasure hunt for a reader. The goal for my podcast is to bring to you either those books or authors that you may never have found, but may be the treasure you've been hunting for all along. Today, in episode 45, I bring to you author Chrissy Dugas. We're going to go over a little bit about who she is, what she's published, what she's working on, and maybe what her plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Chrissy.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
Absolutely. I'm happy you're here today. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
It's actually pronounced Dugas, but everybody makes that mistake, so it's totally fine. Still gets the name out there, so it doesn't bother me.
It's funny too, because it was actually the one question I was going to ask you before I started recording, and I completely forgot to do it.
No, it's totally fine. Trust me. All my lovely readers on TikTok who have reviewed my book, it's totally okay. It really doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. Um, why don't we begin? Give the viewers an introduction to who you are.
So I am actually medically trained. I work right now in phlebotomy and nursing. Um, but I've been writing for, gosh, probably like 20 years. I was under the guidance and mentor of author Jonathan Mayberry. He is New York Times bestselling author, Bram Stoker Award winner, talented, amazing author. Should really check out his stuff. And he's who got me into writing, and it's just kind of been, a passion, a hobby, an escape for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of us. It really is like a passion project for all of us. We would like it to be a career, but that's only usually for a few that this works. But it's really a passion for all of us that we just truly enjoy doing this.
I mean, hey, if you're getting a royalty check, you're you're a professional author. It
Absolutely.
still counts. People
Absolutely.
in your book and loving it,
Yeah.
and counts in my book.
Yep. It counts in mine as well, even if all the zeros are in the front instead of behind the numbers.
Exactly, exactly.
Why don't you give the viewers a kind of an idea of what influences you creatively? And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be authors and books.
So and I'm sure every other author, real life experiences, memories, people. Literally, when I say everything, I mean everything. Like, I'm a huge history buff. I'm a big nostalgic person. I love, memories, all those special things I hold dear to me. And those are my, biggest inspirations. And usually when I say most of what happens in my books um, has probably happened to me or somebody I've known, it's usually true. Names are changed, situations are
Yeah.
changed, but like, the memory itself is what I go off of. So it's everything for me.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point because and it goes back to really why there doesn't need to be competition between authors because every
Exactly.
author's voice is unique, right? And that's the
Exactly.
beauty of it because like you said, it's based on your experiences, your likes,
Exactly.
your
It's like
knowledge base
painting.
of things you've learned, right?
It's like paintings. What one
Yeah.
person would love to hang in their house, another person would absolutely hate. Same thing goes for books. You know,
Yep.
what one person is like, "Ooh, you write romance and history? No thanks. Give me the sci-fi, give me the fantasy." Whereas the other person's like, "No, no, no. Give me the history, give me the romance." So
I
that's
mean,
what's so beautiful about books is it's so diverse and there's a
yes.
story for everybody.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful about any form of art in general, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
artwork, whether it's music, writing, it is because you're not going to satisfy everybody, right? And
Exactly.
it goes back to you can't expect to get 5-star reviews for everybody. Not everybody's going to like it. It's not meant for everybody. You don't want it to be meant for everybody because when it is, it's very, very watered down, right? It's very generic when it
Exactly.
is for everybody. And the beauty of being an indie author and the beauty that all of us experience is you can do anything you want, right? You can write it any fashion you want. You don't have to follow anything, right? And the
Exactly.
beauty of that goes back to, again, is there is an audience for your voice, right? If you say, you know what, I'm going to write an entire book of flashbacks and do it out of order and do it any way I want, and
Mhm.
everybody's like, I'm very confused reading your book. There's an audience out there that goes, wow, I love the way this worked, the way his
Exactly.
mind went through it. There's an audience, right? So
Mhm.
never think that, you being unique and you coming with your own voice is wrong. There is no wrong. There is no right and wrong.
Exactly. There, it's not a paint by numbers.
No.
It's your own canvas.
And if it was, none of us would really like it, right? I mean, if it was, because
Exactly.
that's why we do this.
Exactly. And I think that's the great thing about being indie, especially, is it's, and nothing against traditional publishing at all, but like you really do have that freedom.
Hmm.
Traditional publishing, like, it's more the money makers, you know how long can that cash cow, what's the next Harry Potter, what's the next Game of Thrones, all of that, Lord of the Rings. And I think in the indie world, it's not about that. It's
No.
about the story itself, and it's about the messages, and all the beautiful things that us indie authors write.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to anything that's popular, anything that's
Mhm.
out front. It's not necessarily right. It's always just right now, right? And
Exactly.
doesn't
Exactly.
mean it's more talented. Doesn't mean it's more
Mhm.
skillful. It doesn't even mean it's better. It's just
And I think people
what's being
forget
looked for at
that.
the moment, right?
I think people truly forget that. They associate traditional publishing with, oh, you made it, you are an author, versus indie. Oh, you couldn't hack it, so you did it yourself. And that's not true at all. I've had myself, when I was querying where the butterflies land, I had so many agents say to me, and your writing is great, but this isn't gonna, I don't think this is gonna sell. I don't think this is a story that's really gonna resonate and gonna sell. And it could be further from the truth with it. All the people that have reached out to me that have said, like, um all the issues you touch upon, like, they spoke to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's wrong to associate, one is bad and one is good.
Yeah. It's I hate hearing that. The thing that always I dislike the most is, when you see some of these younger writers that are trying to go traditional and
Hmm.
they are querying and they're doing it over and over, and you see their posts where they get down and they get depressed, and I was like, you need to understand it's one person that read it, right? Like you said, one person is saying this is not going to work for us, or I don't think it's going to work. One person, right? And you can't judge your skill, your talent, or your book, your writing by one person, because again, you're not going to satisfy everyone.
Why let that one negative review, that one star review, or that one query rejection, ruin every 4 and 5 star review and every reader reaching out to you telling how much your book meant to them?
Yeah,
You shouldn't let it negate it at all.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to get everybody to think that way, but you would hope people don't take it to heart, because you're not going to get 100% 5 stars. It's
Exactly.
just not going to happen. Just
If you're not
don't
someone's
try
cup
it.
of tea, you're someone's glass of whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about your book. Why don't you let the viewers know the name of the book and kind of give a brief summary about what it's about?
So it's called Where the Butterflies Land, and it is like a mock memoir style. I don't even want to call it like fully romance, because romance is a part of the plot, but it's more than that. It's about mental health awareness, substance abuse, and friendship, and it's a woman looking back on her life and her first true love and her first real friendships in 1966, and the lessons that she learned from it. So I hate to say romance, but I mean, if you're gonna pick the big the big category, the big genre, it is romance, but there is more to it than that.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to almost any book. I don't care what it is. It's multiple genres, right? You have probably what the majority of something is, but then you have all these other aspects that go into it.
Exactly.
And you hate to sometimes pigeonhole it into it is this, because most of the time especially for us indie authors, because we're not trying to follow a formula. You do branch out. There's much more involved in these storylines, and again, that's what makes them so much better sometimes.
Yeah. No, I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, and I would see, it's interesting that they said they didn't think it would sell, right? Because again, what really touches the reader is that connection, right? The connection to the story.
Hmm.
And what better way for a reader to connect than experiences, right? Whether they're
Yeah.
good or bad, that experience is a connection, right? Everybody, if they have an experience, you know, again, love lost, love found, addictions or pain or challenges, if you haven't experienced it personally, somebody who has, right? And that's a connection to the story. So it's again, it goes back to one person's opinion doesn't really mean a lot, right? So you should always take that with a grain of salt.
I think people, when you think of a book, I feel like most people, especially people who aren't, big readers, that if you say, name a book, I feel like most people want to go for like the fantasy, sci-fi, the bigger names like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and stuff like that. And people forget that like books, like we're human. Like all our experiences, we are human. We laugh, we cry. And I touch on that in my book that, we are human. We laugh,
Yeah.
we cry, we're happy, we're sad. We fall sometimes from grace, but we pick
Hmm.
ourselves up and we can pick ourselves up with love and with friendship. And I think the stories that touch on more truer, real stuff for people to relate to, I think we forget that those stories exist because most people think of the big fantasy stuff. And nothing against fantasy. I'm a major Lord of the Rings nerd, big time, like
Yeah.
quote it, love it. But people forget that there's so many great books out there with like real stories and real relating feelings. Like you read that character and you're like, oh my gosh, like I am that character. I've been that character. And you feel a
Yep.
little bit more validated and you feel, better reading that. Like, wow, like, this is real. Like other people feel this way and it makes you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the connection, right? The connection is the most important thing a reader wants, right? And you go to all these TikTok videos and stuff, and they're talking about the morally gray men and the stories and stuff, how they connect with it. It's the connection, right? Whether it's a healthy connection or not, it's a connection that they're
Yeah.
making, and that's what's drawing them in, right? And that goes back to if it's an experience that you've experienced or know about, you're going to have that connection, right? And that's what's going to pull them in. That's what's going to get them to really feel and understand that character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
No.
interesting because I don't, everything I love, whether it's, I absolutely love Japanese cinema, favorite of anything, right? I love Marvel. I love same thing, Lord of the Rings, all Star Wars, everything. But would I watch that every single time? No, I'm a huge horror fan too, right? I'll
Exactly.
also watch, I love old 40s dramas and stuff too because
Mhm.
of my grandparents and what they used to watch. So, you don't watch the same thing. Sometimes you don't want the same thing
Exactly.
all the time, right?
Sometimes
You
you
don't want
can't
to do
handle a
100%
sad.
of one thing.
Yeah, sometimes you can't handle a sad, heavy movie. You need a happy movie. Or sometimes you're like, you know what? I want to feel, I want to be in my feels a little bit. I want to be a little
Yeah.
emotional, like I had a bad day, or I want to, what? Maybe I'm not having that romance in my life. I want to watch that movie or read that book with that romance. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and that's the beautiful thing about how diverse so many genres, so many stories. I mean, I know I just spoke on looking for the book that you can relate to realistically, but it's also wonderful that sci-fi and fantasy exist because if you're tired of real life, those books exist so that you can escape and you can go
Yeah.
to that faraway world, you know, and escape for a few hours
Yeah.
or so it's beautiful that you have both and that's what's
Yeah.
so wonderful about the diversity of books.
Yeah. And even at the level of the stories and writing as well, because it goes back to, if you take movies as a reference, there's times where you don't care how stupid the movie is, you just enjoy it, right? You enjoy that 90 minutes of dumbness that you're
Exactly.
watching. And sometimes even in the book, like you said, it's a getaway. It's a getaway from I don't want to think about this other stuff. And sometimes you just want to be entertained, and that
Yeah,
whatever, if it's a novella, short story, whatever, just to be entertained and taken through the story is what was needed at the time, right? It doesn't
exactly.
have to always follow a certain structure and a certain point of view and how it has to be written. It doesn't need to, and that's the beauty of being an indie author is that
Exactly.
you don't have to follow it, right? You can do it how you want.
Yeah. You write whatever the heck you want to write. And someone somewhere, whether you sell one copy or 1,000 copies, I think if if you speak to somebody, like I had a reader who messaged me and told me, um, I was like Roger. I had some mental health and addiction issues, but I rose above it. And seeing a character like that and seeing how he was made human and he was made, you know, lovable, and his sweet, nice characteristics shown through past, the real human
Yeah.
issues that he had. That like I started tearing up because hearing a reader tell me that she related, that she was Roger, meant so much to me. Just like at the end of the day, like you said, whether the zeros are in the front or in the back, like I think resonating with readers and just,
Yeah.
getting your name out there and establishing like your core readers who look forward to what you produce. To me, that's worth more than a royalty check will ever be. And some people might
Yeah.
be shaking their head saying you sound ridiculous, but you could get a job anywhere and make money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if so
You you're
maybe,
you're much richer when you do something that feeds your soul, right? And you feed your
yes,
soul when you do something you love because
exactly.
you love it, not because there's something that's coming for it, right? And most of us, a large chunk of us, especially indie side, do this because we love it, because it's not paying for stuff we need to pay
Yeah,
for it, right? We're doing it
exactly.
because we love doing this. It's bringing more work upon us. It's bringing more cost upon us, but we love it, right? And that's
Yeah,
that's the beauty of this and
yeah,
doing this. And
exactly.
you made a good point again that the reader was saying he resonated with the character, right? And it goes back to you know people want to be represented, right? Whether again it's in movies, it's in books, it's in stories. Even go back to Barbies in the past when they always had the one look. People
Hmm.
just want to be represented
Yeah,
some way, right? Or somewhere where they can see, okay, I'm here. I
yeah.
People acknowledge that we exist, right?
Hmm.
And part of the reason I do all this is for that reason, is to get indie authors out there, right? Do I have a huge following on my podcast? No, not. I would say not yet. Rather than say no. Do I have a huge following on my socials? No, not really. But if I can bring another 20 readers to you guys that hadn't found you, and maybe word of mouth from them spread, then I feel like I've accomplished something. Because again, every one of you are extremely talented, and your works are all valid and amazing and worth being found. But it's difficult. It's difficult for all of us to be found out there, right? And
Nobody
it's just
understands how hard the marketing and
no,
like if somebody said what was the hardest part about writing the book, it wouldn't be writing the book. It would be
it's the
literally
marketing.
the marketing, the social media.
Yeah,
Like I have to remind myself. I said to myself earlier, I was like, "Oh, I I got to put some love into my TikTok because I've been a little, dry on there lately." I have to remind myself, like, you got to set some time aside. Like, yeah, you got to get the writing done. You got to get that next book out. But at the same time, you got to focus on the marketing aspect and your social medias, which I think
it's
people forget, with traditional publishing, someone's doing that for you.
yeah,
Indie authors don't get enough credit that they're doing all that. They're
doing
writing the book,
everything.
they're producing the book, they're designing the covers, or they're getting help from awesome artists to design the covers. They're doing the marketing themselves, they're editing themselves. I mean, some people hire editors and, help along the way, but most of us are doing everything ourselves. And it stinks that we're not getting enough credit where it's
Yeah.
deserved.
Yeah, or you get grief from some people that say it's not valid or it's not a valid form,
Exactly.
and that's it's just a horrible, horrible take. But it goes back to why I do all this, right? Every time I see your guys' posts, if I see them, I share them, right? I try to add them to my story. I try to share them out there again because you just try to get eyes on it,
Yeah.
right? And it's really social media, Amazon, all of this stuff goes back to the algorithm, right? And I've used the algorithm for years in my normal job because, we sell stuff online and it's interaction, right? So I do my best to like you guys post, reshare them, save them,
Yeah.
comment when I can, things like that, because the interaction helps you guys build in the algorithm, helps me build in the algorithm, right? And everything I can do. And that's why I always tell people tag me because the problem is I can't see everything you guys
Yeah.
post sometimes.
Exactly.
And I hate looking like a stalker going into your page to say, okay, what are they supposed to do? So
And
I
I
can
am
try
like,
to
I
share it.
honestly like feel like I have the attention span of like a goldfish because like so many of you wonderful fellow authors, like I'm gonna call you guys colleagues because that's how I feel. Friends
Hmm.
have been so wonderful to me. Shout out to Autumn Coffer, who is writing the Stolen Royalty series. She has been amazing friend and colleague and fellow author. Jonathan Mayberry, Dr. Orville Birch, they've been so amazing in helping me along the way. And I'm seeing all these controversies lately, of like all these authors, like traditional, more, I'm seeing it more on the traditional side because
Yeah.
they're going in, they're making fake profiles, they're low star rating other authors in the same genres books, they're leaving nasty anonymous reviews, they're tearing each other down, and it's such gross, awful
Yeah.
behavior because it's like taking paint and splashing it on someone else's canvas because
Yeah.
they painted a tree and I painted a tree. Well, I don't like that. Only, my tree can exist. That makes no sense because, hey, what one romance person might like my mock memoir rock romance, somebody might want that, 18th century romance or that,
Hmm.
modern day romance. It's not just solely one, outline, one recipe. And
It,
it's so sad to see authors tearing each other down like that to
yeah.
think it's going to boost them because it doesn't. Eventually, it's all going to come out and it's
It
not going to
just
look good
hurts
on
you in
you.
the
Yeah,
long haul.
exactly.
It
Exactly.
really goes back to it's that sense of entitlement, right? They,
Yes.
they feel so entitled because they feel,
Hmm.
and it's false, but they feel we are better because we are traditionally published, right? And maybe I was published first, so obviously my work is better than your work, right? Or whatever it is, but it's that entitlement that unfortunately is all over the place in this world with people that feel things are owed to them or they're due them
Hmm.
rather than in the old days where people worked for it and said, okay,
Yeah.
I need to earn this. Everybody feels like it's just owed to them already, right? And that's where you get a lot of this attitude and these beliefs that this is a valid response to do for
Yeah.
these things, and it's sad to see that that's where people take that, right? Because like you said, you say colleagues. I've always considered all you guys my book family, right? So
Mhm.
to
Exactly.
me, you guys, you're my sister, my book sister. I have
Hmm.
my book brother. You're all book family because
Yeah.
we all have one common goal. We're all doing the same thing. Again, we're
Exactly.
all doing this because we love to do this, right? We're all putting in the extra work because we love what we're doing. And that's why I do my best to get you guys out there and share. And I just tell everybody tag me. Not everybody always feels bad doing it. I was like, just tag me. I'm telling you, tag me so I can share your guys' stuff. I want to get you guys out there because again, maybe people follow me that don't follow you. At least they'll
Yeah.
start seeing your stuff, right? It doesn't matter how many followers somebody has if
Hmm.
they're followers you don't have. That's a whole new audience, right? So
A new
it
reader
doesn't
is a
go
new
by
reader.
numbers or anything.
A new reader is a new reader regardless. So that's why I love like when people tag me and things like, and like I said, my attention span is so horrible that like I completely I'm so bad with social media. I forget that tagging people is like a thing. But I'm so excited when I see, you know, like you said, the book family, when you tag me in something and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna share it. Like other people need to see that. So
Yeah.
I need to remember to tag people, but I get so excited when people tag me because it's like, ooh, let me share it, let me share it, let me share it, let me get it out there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it goes back to, it's a mixture of everything, right? It goes back to representation, right? So I know you noticed on thing I've done the Latinx Indie Author Alliance thing with Bonita for the same reason, because you know when you go again to popular stuff and stuff,
Hmm.
the Latin authors and stuff don't get seen. They don't get pulled up in the algorithm. Do you ever see any of them really on the For You pages or on any normal when you don't? And I'm trying to we try to do tag us so we can share your work. Just as long as you start catching the algorithm, you'll be seen, right?
Yeah.
Again, am I saying we're going to put you out in front of everybody? No, but it goes back to representation, getting you out there, because then younger generations see more Latin authors, or they see more female representation, or they see more anything, whatever that representation is, and it gives them a reason to say, okay, let me try this too, right? As indie, you know, self-publishing started to get bigger, more people went the route to say, let me try it.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy they did, because, you know, every one of you guys that I've met are extremely talented, right? All you guys' works are not only valid, they're beautiful works. And you know, for those of us that would never have tried that, none of those ever would have been put out. And that's the shame of it, is not even trying to go that route because you feel one avenue is better than the other.
Yeah. My favorite question always, when I tell people, it's not the first thing I tell someone, oh, like I'm an author, not trying to sound like pretentious or anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm proud of it, but at the same time, I'm not going to shove it down your throat
Yeah.
because, what I write might not be your cup of tea. And I don't want someone to feel awkward and obligated. But my favorite question, I love the irony in it, is, oh, you're in Barnes and Noble? That's awesome. Oh, you're on Amazon. That's great. You're in Books a Million. That's awesome. But are you in store? Oh, you're only online, but you're not
Yeah.
in store. I'm sorry, but if you're carried in store, you're carried in, you know what I mean? Like if you're online, that's in store to me. You
Yeah.
are you are
That's a
carried
store.
by them. Your book is carried by them. So that question just always cracks me up. Oh, you're not in store. Well, I'm online. You can purchase. They can't carry every single book made by every human in the store,
No.
and that's where the traditional publishing people come in to fight for that right to get that book on the shelf more so than, us. But hey, you're listed on their website. You are carried by them. It counts. It's an accomplishment. Be proud of yourself. Don't let someone tell you because you're not carried in a store, you're just online, it doesn't count, because it's such a backhanded compliment,
Yeah.
and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it's ugh.
It goes back to, it is a backhanded compliment, because it goes back to, you know, there's got to be a reason you're not better than me for doing this. So let me bring this reason up, because
Yep.
that's all I
Let
have
me
at the
hold it
moment,
over
right?
your
That's all
head.
I can pull.
Exactly. Let me hold it over your head that, oh, my book's on the shelf. It's petty. It's such
Yeah.
a silly question. I find it ironic because to me, your name is in. You Google me, I'm in Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that question always makes me laugh.
And you know, honestly, if they really wanted to look, when you really go and look at the numbers, look at the growth for online shopping of anything versus the growth from a big box brick and mortar store.
Hmm.
Not the same anymore. Your sales are traditionally from an online, right? And one of the bigger ones they talk about, like you said, is Barnes and Noble. And if you are online at Barnes and Noble and you call the local store, they'll bring your book in, so you'll be in store also, right? So it's not,
Yeah.
it's not that different of a thing. to be
Exactly.
in store. You're actually reaching much more people online
Yeah.
than you are in a local store, right? And
Yeah.
it's again, it's just they try to pull anything they can to try to bring it down a notch when they feel it's not
Yep.
relevant, right?
Exactly.
And we got a little too far away from your book here, but one of the questions I get, I like to ask. We talked about a favorite scene in your book.
I would. I would probably say, and it's been a reader favorite, um, is a scene in the book where the title comes from, the explanation of what "Where the Butterflies Land" means.
Okay.
Just a little without spoilers. Emmy and Roger are sitting in her backyard and she's gardening, and a butterfly lands on Roger's arm, and Roger's having some mental health struggles. Won't give away why.
Yeah.
Something big is happening to him and the boys. But Emmy explains to Roger that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, that no one has ever took the time to explain to Roger that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. You're allowed to be upset, you're allowed to be anxious, you're allowed to be depressed, you're allowed to be
Mhm.
happy, you're allowed to feel anything. You want to make sure you're going from moment to moment, enjoying it, and you know feeling your emotions and being human. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably my favorite, and that's a big reader favorite that I've been told. And that's the exact scene chapter where the title comes from.
Okay. Did you have on the opposite end? Did you have a hard scene to write?
I did, and it's so hard to say what it is without giving a spoiler away.
You don't have to then. I don't want you
Um,
to give anything away. So you don't have. You can say you did, but we'll leave that for the
honest,
readers to figure out.
honestly, you know what? Without giving away like a spoiler, like the actual like one that made me emotionally sad, it was killing somebody off. I think the hardest scene was probably Emmy. It was probably the first chapter, Emmy saying goodbye to her three older brothers and her mom and her dad, leaving for Philadelphia from down south. Because I have her explaining that, um, I didn't really visit much, after that. I didn't feel like that was home. Philadelphia felt like it was home for me.
Yeah. Okay. Um, the other question I usually like to ask is research, right? And I usually like to ask this question again because it's something for like the younger writers for them to understand that it is important, even if it's only a sprinkle of research you do, because the one reader will find that you don't know what you're talking about because you
Yeah.
didn't really research it. It's almost 100% guaranteed that will be the one reader that picks up your book and reads it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say my biggest source of research would probably have been, my dad and my stepmom. They were born in 1958, so they do remember, the 60s. Um, and they were able to help me with little questions that I had. But YouTube and Google and um, archives were huge, huge tools for me, especially when I write a chapter about an episode of, I believe it's the Dick Clark show, when
Hmm.
Pink Floyd first made their American debut on TV. I actually watched that YouTube clip and I quoted Dick Clark, word for word what he said, and that's how I introduce, because I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and that's
Yeah.
how I introduce, you know, kind of throw Pink Floyd in there and show that the characters were more progressive for the times, and that's what they were into. So a lot of archives, a lot of Google, a lot of YouTube, and my parents, believe it or not.
Yeah. But it's a valid point because you using the actual words from the episode, right? From the actual
Yeah,
episode that aired is important because there are people that are going to remember that episode to heart, right? They know that episode because it was a big moment for them, and they would realize that your words were off
yeah,
or
exactly.
completely different than what happened. So it is again a good point. even something as simple as just watching it and saying, "Oh, okay, I take this." Because again, there are people that was a huge moment for, and do remember it, moment for moment, word for word.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Um, so, are you working on a current project right now? A working project?
I am. I am working on a World War II Holocaust novel. Um, Thankful for some family members who were so kind. I grew up Roman Catholic, so I obviously I'm not, very well versed in, Jewish practices and the faith and whatnot. So having, an extended family member who is Jewish, and he was able to help me, so much, and give me a rundown of what it's like for him and his family when they celebrate, the specific holiday that I was writing about in a chapter. It's so wonderful to have that help, and it's definitely nerve wracking writing from a different perspective, um, in terms of like, religion and even a different like nationality. But, having the firsthand accounts and help from the people who live it every day is so eye opening, and it's so refreshing to learn all that I've learned to put into
Yeah.
this project. So I'm actually really excited for this book to come out. This has been huge for me. It's I'll say that it's about a German heiress who befriends one of her dad's Jewish factory workers on the night of Kristallnacht, and they become good friends. And she is determined to save him and maintain their friendship. And all of her dad's, Jewish workers, she's determined to make a change in the world and, fight all the ugliness that was going on. So really excited to get this project out, and, to get, you know, point of views that might not always be told. I'm really, excited to get this book out. So I'm like, hurry and hurry and hurry and trying to get it out. So I'm super excited.
When are you planning right now?
I'm hoping to have it by the summer. I'm 30,000 words in, trying to make it to 90. I'm a talker, as you can see. So I usually run to the 90K to 100K. So I'm trying to, stay there. So hopefully summer is my goal. And I can say it is called My Promise to You.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I can talk forever too, but I find myself when I find myself writing with less words.
Yes.
So I find myself
Yep.
doing a lot less, a lot more direct descriptions and taking you rather than maybe like normally I do when I'm talking. So that's an interesting point.
Right.
Um,
Well, when you write the book, you want to make sure it sounds beautiful and eloquent, and it's not like, well, he said, she said, they went to the store, they went to the library. When we talk, we're just like, it's just flowing. Whereas the book, you want it to sound so beautiful and so eloquent. I think that can also be a struggle for talkers like us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I thought about this as I was writing, and again, horror movies are a huge, huge influence in my life. Movies in general, like I said, Japanese cinema and stuff, but horror movies are a huge influence, right? And I found myself, and somebody made the comment, and when they read my book, that it's written like a movie, right? It's almost like you can just put the book into a screenplay fairly
Yes.
quickly because it's almost written as you would watch the movie, kind of thing.
That's
And
how I write mine. Like as I'm
right,
writing, so I know this is actually like caused like a few people to get a little a little angry with me when I've admitted it. But the only thing I outline about my books are my characters.
yeah,
The rest of the plot, unless I like come up with a little snippet here or there, the rest of the plot I write as I
flows,
go. Like I imagine it in
yeah,
my head as I'm writing, as if it were a movie.
yeah,
So it's so funny that you say that. I love that point because especially with where the butterflies land, as I was writing it, I'm thinking like, oh, who would I cast? you know, this scene, that scene. So it's so funny you say that.
Yeah, it's I would assume a lot of writers do it to a point, but I did find myself almost like I was watching a movie and basically
Yes.
dictating it, right? Dictating the movie I was watching. And I find, and I don't know if it did the same for you, but I find it flows easier, right? Somewhat
Mhm.
easier
Yes.
because you're just letting it organically grow. And again, I've said this in the past, and I could be wrong, but I feel a lot of times that maybe that writer's block is when you're trying to force your outline
Mhm.
rather than just letting the story flow,
Exactly. And that's why
right?
I try not to outline because I don't want to put myself in a block or corner myself where I'm like, oh, like maybe I don't want to go this direction with the plot now, which from when I first came up with this concept for this World War II Holocaust novel, it's so different from where I'm at now in the plot and where I want to go with it. So it's that was such a perfect point.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about this before, and I've brought this up on the podcast previously, but I really think that writing a story is very similar to everyday life, right? And when you don't hold yourself to following an outline, what happens is your characters in your story have an experience, they meet somebody, they have a challenge, and you have growth, right? You either grow from the experience or you don't grow from the experience. So you experience it again because you didn't learn from the thing. But really, like everyday life, it's the same thing. And there's so many authors that say, I had a small character that never wanted to go away. It just became a larger character and it became a main character, and that's really everyday life, right? You may meet somebody that was just a chance meeting or for something simple, and they become a bigger part of your life for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be romantic, but for whatever reason that is. And that changes the path your life was originally on, even if it's just a fraction, it
Yeah,
changes it, right? And I
exactly.
always feel that that correlates very, very similarly to a storyline, that you may write a scene that your character experiences something, and that experience may not lead them in what your original outline meant them to go to. That experience may take them a different direction because it depends on how they grew from it, right? What choice did they make? So I don't outline for that reason because I find it holds you too
Yep.
much, right? It restricts you too much.
I actually did that with a character. Excuse me. I did that with a character, and he's like, as of right now, so far, all the characters like that I've written in this story, he is my favorite because of the direction. I suddenly was like, I want to try something different, and I did. And I send as I write. I send to a couple close family members who are part of my great support system, and they read it as I'm writing it, and they tell me, you know what, that's no good. That's it's not flowing, or yeah, yay or nay. And he's been a pretty big, family favorite so far. So I'm really excited. There's a couple more characters that I haven't gotten to yet in the story, in the plot. So I'm really excited to get to them, but definitely nerve wracking to get this one out because this is a much more sensitive subject and subject matter, and you never ever want to be disrespectful
Yeah.
or, you know, incorrect in your information. So definitely a ton of fact checking and, firsthand accounts,
Yeah.
all of that.
And it goes back. It's a subject that has, unfortunately, sometimes a very hard line between two halves, right? Halves that have full beliefs on one side of it, right or wrong, halves
Hmm.
of it that have another full belief on the other side of it, right or wrong, and then a whole group that's in the middle and understanding the gray areas on some points of it, right? Because there's
Yep.
some points that there is no gray area, right? It's very,
Yeah.
very obviously it was not the right thing to be happening,
Yeah.
but it's a story or a subject that does have that very deep, rigid lines sometimes. And that goes back to not expecting everybody to enjoy it because it is a subject matter that you are going to have, both sides of it that could love it, could hate it,
Yeah.
and then some that aren't sure, right? They're kind
Yeah.
of going on the line because they're not sure what to feel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I tweeted about it actually the other day, and somebody commented on the tweet, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh, well, back then, the Germans thought they were 100% right in what they were doing." And, you know, all my response to that was, Winston Churchill is quoted as saying, history is written by the victors. So, you're going to get people that read it that are like, oh, this is garbage. This is wrong. You're going to get people who are reading it like, no, like, these were the good guys. These were the
Yeah.
bad guys. You know what I mean? So,
You have that whole section that said, well, this never happened. We're like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. Exactly.
So so
So, this
it's
is
gonna
the
be all over the
interesting.
place. It's
Maybe I'm
crazy.
digging myself into a hole. I don't know.
Quick question for you though. It's not the same storyline, but have you thought about or have you gone and watched back some of Schindler's List because
Yes.
you do have some of the maybe
Yes.
some of the struggles explained that he had to go through to
Yes.
try to save or try to help some of the people.
And when people ask me what this book is about, I basically say, well, it's kind of like a female Schindler's List, and I hate to lump it with
Yeah.
Schindler's List, but most people have seen it, so they know what it's about, and they know how hardcore, and they understand the subject matter. If I'm just like, oh, it's a World War II Holocaust. That could mean anything. That could
Yeah.
mean from a soldier's point of view. That could mean from somebody in a concentration camp's point of view. You know, it could mean anything. So I try not to lump it with Schindler's List, but to get people to understand better, I throw that out there just to kind of give a general idea.
It's just the elevator sale, right? To try to give them an idea of what it's about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, so after this book, right? This book comes out and it's amazing. Everybody loves it, right? We don't have any naysayers. Everybody loves it. It's all 5 stars and everything. Do you have a plan for your next work, or you're gonna just kind of let me get through this and I'll think about it after that?
So I am so absolutely fascinated by they're two completely different time periods, but Marie Antoinette and Henry VIII. So it's gonna be one of the two, probably leaning more towards a story surrounding Marie Antoinette. Um, but I just love history, so it's always going to be history based. So it's picking where do I want to go in the direction with either something Henry VIII related or Marie Antoinette. So that idea is brewing.
In within the history part, right? So within the historical foundation, do you find that you're going to lean one way or the other in terms of, I don't want to say the style or genre, maybe the direction you would go, right?
I just
Or just let it go, just let it flow.
I think it's more let it flow. I also have something that I had started a while ago. I live, right outside of Philadelphia, so kind of like, I jokingly say I'm like M. Night Shyamalan of writing, like I do a lot of like Pennsylvania, Philadelphia with my stories. And I was thinking about the Philadelphia Zoo. It was, America's first zoo. It had that tagline when it opened. And I was, reading about the history of it. And I was thinking of doing something with that. Um, don't know where I want to take it, but I did write like a scene between, my female main character, my male main character. And it was very easy to write and it flowed. And I really liked what came out. So trying to play around with that one too. So I do technically have another one started, but I don't know where I want to go with that one yet. So I
That
think
I
all
mean
my
that could be a great little palate cleanser, right? Because you go from, your initial book that has some mental health and, that
Mhm.
challenges, then you go to the Holocaust,
Yeah,
and then you're going to go to maybe Marie Antoinette or Henry VIII.
yeah, right.
The Philadelphia Zoo might be a good little palate cleanser in the middle to kind of break those up.
Hmm. And I have like a little kind of, I don't want to say memoir, but I guess it is. I had a kidney transplant. I have a rare kidney disease. So, I undergo chemo infusions, and it's been about a decade now since, and all the amazing, doctors and nurses and, aides and techs and just people in general that I've met and the things that they've taught me. I think that would also make a really good, like, I don't think I am by any means interesting, but it's more about the people that I met and the
Yeah.
amazing lessons that they taught me about life and about living and about feeling. And I think a lot of people would benefit from a book like that, to know about those amazing people that I
Yeah.
met. Not about me, about these people, 100% about these people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be an amazing thing to write too, because again, it goes back to representation, right? So you have people that have gone through something similar. It's never going to be the same, or maybe coming up will go through something similar.
Mhm.
And again, it's a good thing for them to connect to see, how you went through it. Like you said, the support and help that you were given by some amazing people, because support is one of the most amazing things to have in your life, right? And support is not necessarily always the positive support, right? It doesn't always have to be you're amazing, or like you said, you have some family members you send the book to. Support doesn't mean they're always going, "Oh, this is great, this is
Yeah,
amazing." Support
exactly.
is sometimes saying, "This did not work for me."
Yeah.
You need to relook at it, all right?
Hmm.
It's sometimes the tough love where they tell you what it is and saying, "You got to do it this way. You're not looking at it the right way." So
Yeah.
I do think that would be a great thing to write, because it would give, I think, a great impact to a lot of the people that either have gone through it, or will be going through it, in terms of what your experience was and how those people really truly helped them. Because those people are not going to be there for them, but their message can be
Yeah.
in your work. And then anything else going forward, like you said, historical, Henry VIII, Marie Antoinette, is there anything goal wise oriented for writing that you would want to do at some point, that maybe you tackle further down the line, or something you would attempt to do? And it could be anything, another genre, a different type of storyline, maybe something out of your comfort zone.
Definitely. And, I think a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when I say this, but I would really like to do something cool with vampires and historical. I think you could really, you know, make something cool with that. So I have thought about that. I have thought about, like, you should try something, just to try and flex your writing muscles, see what
Yeah,
you see what you're capable of, see what you can do.
yeah,
So I was, here and there the thought comes in and out, like vampires, historical. I think we could do something with that.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it would be a good direction, because if you're living thousands of years,
yes,
you have any time period to kind of play with, to
exactly.
go through, right? Do you watch horror movies at all?
I do. I haven't really had time to. Oh, I actually just. I don't know if you would consider this horror. I actually just saw Lisa Frankenstein, but that was the last, I guess, horror that I saw. But I have seen quite a few horror films.
Did you see the Pope's Exorcist? I think it
It's
was last year or something.
it sounds like something I'd want to watch, but my boyfriend absolutely is terrified of horror. So,
Well,
and I
yeah.
don't want to watch it by myself. So probably not.
The reason I bring it up is, it's an exorcism movie. It kind of follows. It uses a real life historical character changes the story a little, right? But they did an interesting thing that reminded me of what you're talking about in terms of vampires and historical, right? And this was talking about exorcisms within the church, hidden things that they try to keep secret, stuff like that. But there's a point they make in there, which I thought should have been the main storyline because I was like, that was brilliant. And they made it a small little point of the story.
I know.
But in the storyline, one of the original popes was possessed, right?
Oh, wow.
And because the pope was possessed, that's why all the torture during the Spanish Inquisition was happening, because he was sending them out and saying, do these evil things, torture these people, kill these people, because basically there was a demon leading the church at the moment, right? So it was a very interesting way to take that direction and explain a darker part of history that a lot of people don't talk about. They know it, but they don't talk about it. But it was a good twist to kind of explain that, and that really reminded me of that when you talked about that vampires throughout history, because it could explain a lot of stuff that happened that you really said to go, why did they do that? That could explain certain things like that where you could basically retell historical events with your twist, right? So
Yeah.
I always thought that was interesting, but they made it such a small part of the story. When I said that should have been the movie, right? That should have been everything.
That does sound like that would. See, that's the little stuff like that that draws me in that I would love. So that's a shame. That does sound like that would have been a better, bigger part of the plot.
Yeah, because my wife and I, we love horror, right? So we're watching it. We're like, oh, that movie's okay. It's not bad. And they get to the scene, and I was like, this is brilliant. And then,
Yeah.
it's just a piece. I was like, what are you doing? That should have been 2 hours by itself right there. But yeah, it's interesting because I do think that's a great take to try to do that. If you do attempt it, it's an interesting way to bring history to a reader, but giving them that twist to bring in, a horror reader because it has that, or a fantasy reader because you're bringing in the elements that bring them to a historical story. So it's a good way to approach it.
Tough,
And
but tough, but we get it done, right?
yeah, absolutely. I want to just thank you for coming on, Christy. I really did enjoy this. I'd love talking to you. Finally getting to meet you like this, to be able to talk. So many times, all of us on social media, it's a quick message, it's a share, it's a comment. So we don't really ever get to meet each other and talk to each other. So I always really enjoy this time to really get to know you guys and know the person behind the stories, behind the books. But I do want to thank you for coming on.
No, I'm so thankful and grateful for you having me. Like, this was awesome. Like, just love the banter. Was so excited for this, and I can't wait for this to be out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll get it out there. We'll get it shared across everything. Just want to thank the viewers again for watching. I will have down below in the description all the links for Chrissy. So her book links, website, socials, whatever she wants to share will be down below. So you can go ahead and follow her. If you have a comment for each of us, definitely leave it. If you have a question or anything, we'd love to see it and answer you. And definitely subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications so you don't miss all these amazing indie authors I have coming up. Thank you again, Christy, and thank you, viewers, for watching.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
I enjoyed it as well. Goodbye.
Bye bye.